Well, I'm going to try a new approach. This is for our third essay and the final essay. And it's just difficult to size this article for what we have time to work with. And so I'm trying to think of a way of fitting it in so you can get the substance of what I'm trying to do without, getting overworked and doing too much stuff. So the first assignment, which will be due Thursday, and I'll post the discussions for that later today, which is Monday, will be about kind of understanding keywords, tone, bias, and doing that in not all but most of the sections of this article. You can even look at the title, The State of Climate Science. Sounds almost like the State of the Union, something very formal, something authoritative. No justification for extreme policies. Already, anything being done to mitigate climate change is seen as extreme. No need for extreme policies. So obviously, if the policies are extreme, they're not reliable, they're not done by responsible people, thoughtful people, kind of fringe, crazy people. So notice I'm kind of unpacking the bias here. According to this authoritative organization, we don't need to be like those extremists, which is another subtext, because in the conservative pro-business side, environmentalists are always kind of married to the word extremism. They're all kooks. So it works right away. And the first sentence, hysteria. Over global warming is now pervasive in the federal government, the whole government, not just the Obama administration's energy and environmental policies, but nearly every federal department and agency. So the whole government is gone crazy with hysteria. Sorry, I didn't mean to jump forward that quickly. So you have to unpack that. Figure out why it's important for them to say that the environmental policies and energy policies are born out of hysteria. And understand that if all of these policies are hysteria, then also that, well, then there's really no legitimate reason to do any of this. In other words, keep pumping the gas. So they're trying to discredit anything to do with environmental regulation. And that whole first section is going to be dripping with this. It's very short, very biased. After this assignment, we'll look into the footnotes. That's a whole nother level. But right now, for the first assignment due Thursday, I want you to look at the bias tone, pick out some of the keywords, and more importantly, explain how they're useful to the fossil fuel industries. I guess I should remind you that Heritage gets millions of dollars from the fossil fuel industries. So they have to sing for supper, and they do a great job. And similarly here, the myth of the 97%, it's already loaded. The myth, mythology. Nothing true about it. 97%, which is another word for the consensus. And it's very important for them to deny, undercut, destroy as best they can the claim that 97% of climate scientists think CO2 is driving climate change. So this is going to be loaded. Words. I'll just take this one, for example, nascent climate science. Nascent is new, just beginning, not even starting, which means, hey, they haven't had time to figure out what to do. You know from reading Merchants of Doubt that this science has been around for 150 years, and there's been a lot of work since Lyndon Johnson's administration. More so with Carter, a lot more with Reagan, tons under Bush 1, lots more in 1995, and, et cetera, et cetera. This is not new, but they call it new because if it's considered new, then, hey, wait around. Wait till you really know what you're talking about. So, and again, this whole section here is loaded with bias just in the text. We'll look at the footnotes next, but just in the text. And then the next bold section has a lot of subcategories here. Well, actually not this one, the one following. So this is really cool. I mean, I love it. It's totally dishonest, but you have to ask themselves, why is it important for them to insist that temperature fluctuations have been going on for millions of years? You might be reminded of Mr. Trump in one of his videos saying, it'll change back again. Well, this is a sort of intellectual backbone of that. It'll change back again. And ask yourself, why that's important for the fossil fuel industry. And then look for key and loaded words in this section, real biased language, and unpack it. Now, the next section is the one with several subcategories, and I don't think it's there's just time or even a point to go through every one of these as an individual, but I think as a group we could. So pick your favorite, not necessarily the first. Taking the world's temperature, climate models versus reality, a little section on that. No trends for more extreme or frequent natural disasters. Sea, ice glaciers, and ocean acidification. Take your favorite and just pick one, and hopefully we'll get some kind of a distribution here where enough people will try different ones. We'll get enough of a group on each one. I could assign it by group, but that sounds like a big headache. So I just want to say, pick one of those four. And then finally, the last section, pretty straight. Now that they've pretty much demolished, at least in their publication, the science of climate change, then they can talk about it's not even happening, and look at how much we're going to suffer because of those crazy liberals. High energy bills, less economic growth. Sounds like Trump. It won't do a thing for the climate. And the social costs. And finally, green handouts. I mean, I just love that. That means everybody working for the green industry is somehow on the take from the government. And, lower standard of living, etc. So this is really kind of fun. And for that last section too, you can just take any one of the four sections. So I'll line that out, but basically in the discussion forums, I want you to take the intro, the 97%, these would all be individually and part of a group discussion, and a brief history, because they're reasonably short. So those three I'd like you to see you take a take on by Thursday. And then any one of these, what the scientific data tells us, and any one of the last category, the high costs and negligible benefits. And so what we're going to do is we're going to get good familiarity with the language on the first discussion, and then we're going to go into the footnotes on the second activity. And there'll probably be a few activities on the footnotes because that's kind of going to be at the heart of the paper. So I want you to, be prepared for the discussions I'll put up later. And this is just a kind of open you up to the reading challenge. You're going to be looking for bias in tone, loaded language, and then also being able to explain how that loaded language benefits the fossil fuel industry. I hope that gets you a setup on the reading for this next article that will be the basis of our final paper.